Greetings friends, it's me, Wayman29, and you're lucky I'm here. And this is another installment of Religious Literature for Dummies, all the stuff that the Amazing Atheist and Gleb will not tell you about religious literature. Freeing the literature from the zealots out of their cold, dead hands, so the normal person, like you, can read it again. See friends, religion and the literature is the wagon. Anything that you put on the wagon, like theology, interpretation, can be carried around by the individual. But today, we're going to be unloading that wagon and showing you how the literature can be enjoyed with very few things on it. This installment of Religious Literature for Dummies is on the affair of King David with Bathsheba, and it was recommended by Squitma. Thanks for that recommendation, and it's a really interesting story. The story of the affair of King David lands right in the middle of the Amorite War, and along with the parable of Nathan, which follows that as a response to David's screw-up. And then we have some more, the results of that war. Then we have the rape of Tamar, which ends up being, we get a glimpse into by the writers, into the life of David, and actually the rape of Tamar was put in there to show that Nathan's prophecy actually did come true when he tells David his house will be troubled. Now the text itself, some books on the literature. Got here P. Kyle McCarter Jr., Anchor Bible Commentary on 2 Samuel. Also the JPS Commentary Study Bible, and the works Antiquities of the Jews by Josephus, 4Q Samuel from the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Masoretic text from the Tanakh on Samuel, and the Septuagint. Now the MT and the Septuagint, the Masoretic text, has some issues because the scribe skipped some lines and he tried to make up for it later. So what you need to do is take the Greek text, compare it to the Masoretic text, and some interesting things happen because both scribes, when copying, had issues because copying was very hard because there were no paragraphs, no breaks in the Hebrew, so everything kind of ran together. So when you take the two and you compare them, you can kind of get an overall view of how the story was supposed to go. At any rate, it all started, David, he's at home. He didn't go out to the war. He didn't go out to war. And in the beginning of the text it says when the kings go out to fight, possibly in the spring. Apparently this text is a little bit older. David's a little bit older, and he stays behind when his army is out in the field. And he could be bored. Some scholars believe, well, he's getting retirement blues. He needs to conquer something since he can't be out slicing and dicing. He's on the rooftop. He sees Bathsheba bathing. It's a ritual bathing after her period. She ritually bathes to become clean, which was in the Jewish law code. So he sees her, he calls to her, and they bring her in. They say it's the wife of Uriah. He sleeps with her and sends her back home. Well, she's pregnant. He says, hey David, I'm pregnant. So David doesn't know what to do. He sends out to Joab, his captain of the army, and they send in some messengers, and they say to him, how's the war going? Blah, blah, blah. Well, here, they send back Uriah. And Uriah's there, and David says, came a long way, go wash your feet and sleep in your house. So he's figuring, well, he'll sleep with Bathsheba. However, Uriah knows better. He says to David, after he sleeps outside, David says, well, why didn't you go in to your wife? He says, I slept outside because the men are dwelling in tents on the battlefield. How can I be at home with the comforts of home while my soldiers and my comrades are in sukkahs out on the fields? And so he sleeps outside. Then David, the next day, invites him to a party, gets him drunk, and figures he will sleep with his wife Bathsheba, but he does not. He does not sleep. And so David is kind of distraught about this. So he hands Uriah his death warrant, sealed in a letter to Joab, saying, put Uriah in the front, and when you make the assault, withdraw, leave him out there, and he will die, hopefully. So Joab gets the message, does what happens, and he sends a messenger back to David, saying, tells the messenger, this is what happened. Tell David, when he gets mad, that Uriah is dead. So the messenger goes back. He says to David, we're making assault on the wall. We went all the way to the gates. A few men, a few heroes were killed. And David's really upset. He says, well, before, don't you know any better, you dummy, that when you run up to the wall, before one of our heroes were killed by an old woman who threw a millstone over the top and down onto us. Any captain would know that you don't get your men close to the wall. Then the messenger says Uriah was killed. So David is no longer upset at Joab for not withdrawing the troops, and he hears Uriah is dead, so he's more happy about that than losing some more of his guys, and he sends the messenger back. So what's interesting is later he sends the messengers back telling them to conquer the city, and they in fact do. So you get that story, chapter 11, 1 to 27a. 27b to chapter 12, verse 25 is the parable of Nathan, and he comes in and makes a parable of exposing David to his sin, or his transgression, and he is distraught, David is, and repents. So it's a very interesting story. In the Babylonian Talmud, in Sabbat 56a, I believe, the Rebbe's over the years tried to vindicate David from this sin. And what was interesting about it is that they said that anybody who fought with David signed a warrant of divorce when they went out, so if they were killed in battle, the women were allowed to marry. However, the text does not give that kind of light. Also, they said that because Uriah did not obey the commandments of David going into his house as David commanded him, was a rebel, did not obey kingly orders, and therefore that's probably why he was put to death. And also they say that David's only sin was that he did not have Uriah charged by the Bet Din, or the Council of 70, as a fair trial. Instead, he had him killed in battle. And so it appears that by the time you hit the Talmud, thinking on it, David is totally vindicated of anything. However, the parable of Nathan clearly shows that Yahweh was very angry and retaliated. So take care, friends, and remember, if everyone's thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking.